All right. Well, we are live. Welcome to Inner Join. This is a show where we dive deep into the world of data governance and data management. I'm your host, Shinji Kim, the founder and CEO of SelectStar. SelectStar is a data discovery and governance platform with an automated data catalog, lineage, and documentation. Today, I'm very excited to have Julia Bardmesser, founder and CEO for Data4Real. Please comment on the chat if you have any questions during the show. And Julia, welcome to Inner Join.
Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, so excited to have you here. We met. I actually think I've initially discovered you through LinkedIn from one of your posts, and also had a number of conversations with your former colleague Olga. And yeah, I'm really excited to have you here. You talk a lot about on LinkedIn about different topics of data management and data governance. So we'd love to kick off with this kind of like a classic question for how did you get into data and how did you get to data starting data for real recently.
So I got into data actually accidentally. My first job was at Bloomberg, and it was back then a small company, still before it became a media company. And they hired a bunch of people out of college, and we were placed, me and another guy were placed in the mortgage product team. And we were totally randomly assigned. He was assigned to do more of UX, and I was assigned more to do data cleanup. So we all did everything because, again, it was a small group. So I did UX as well, and he did some data. But a lot of my focus back then was what I would now call ensuring of the integrity of Bloomberg data across multiple installations of their software. And then second time was also pretty random. Then I went on and I worked in different areas. And then when I wanted to become a manager, and I was at Freddie Mac at the time, I had two opportunities. One was the lead data team, and the other one was to lead a team of front office developers. And I interviewed for both of them. And I actually wanted the front office more because it was facing off to trading floor and you're talking directly to your customers, and it's just much more visible position. I didn't get it. I got the data team. And then when I started running it, I'm like, oh, I'm actually good at this. And that was before data was cool or anything. And so that's how I got into data. I mean, I've done a lot of technology, architecture, all the other stuff together with all of this, but that's kind of started my data journey.
What year was that you became the data lead at Freddie
What
Mac?
year was that? Now you want to date me. That's not nice
Oh
of you.
no, I
I
mean this
think it
actually.
was 2001, 2002, something there.
Yeah, that's a long experience that you have in the industry as a
Yeah.
practitioner, but also like really on the ground and all the
Yeah.
way to the leadership positions that you've had in financial services institutions. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so as I said, I started as a developer, and I was a developer for a long time. And then even when I was leading team, I did a lot of SQL and kind of running around all the databases and figuring out what's wrong with them. Then, of course, finally got to the position where it's just not a good use of my time to run SQL. And then I got after the financial crisis, when a lot of financial services companies started creating enterprise chief data offices. That's how I was hired into Citi. And then from there, it's very much focused on data management more so than data engineering. So the last job that I had last corporate job was everything. It's engineering and warehousing and data governance and data quality. So basically end-to-end data data architecture, well, you name it, everything but the data was part of the job. And so that was very interesting to have it all under one umbrella. Um,
What was
so, and,
City trying to build at the time with all
oh,
the
City
people
at
that
the
they are
time,
hiring for
well,
data? What was the
City
main
was,
initiative?
yeah, that was 2 years after, or year and a half after financial crisis. So they were trying to
Mm,
respond to regulators.
like the after 2009
Yeah, after
crisis?
2009.
Yeah.
So in City, I started in 2010. Yeah, now yeah, 2008 is crisis, yeah, 2010. And it was in response to the regulators. They had a 5-year plan to show how they're going to manage their data better. And big part of that plan was establish an enterprise chief data office, policy, all of the stuff that now when you go into a company, you kind of do the council, the policy, data quality, issue management resolution, data lineage, the topic of this discussion. So all of that, so that was the job.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
totally makes sense. Yeah, with all the Dodd-Frank and the FINRA
yeah,
regulations, everything that came out, really, I would say, have shaped and really enforced after the 2009 financial crisis. So,
yeah, yeah. BCBS is a huge one. So BCBS
mhm.
basically said you need to know this is BCBS is a reason a lot of companies do lineage, because it basically says that you have to know where your data is coming from when you do your critical risk reporting. So
Mhm.
or capital reporting. So there is a lot of, so BCBS was a big deal. And of course, there have been multiple iterations. CCAR for US was a big deal as well, because you had to show that not only you ran all of the projections, but also how did you do, how do you know the data that went in was a good data. So that was a big deal as well. And then, I did like Deutsche Bank, which was also very much regulatory focused, and then Voya was not regulatory focused at all and was all for business value. How do you impact the business outcome for the company with a good data management? So which was also very interesting and different take on it. And then, of course, what I do now with Data4Real is helping my clients to do exactly that. How do they achieve the outcomes they're looking for by using data management capabilities?
That's amazing. Um,
So how did you get into data, Shinji? I know I don't think that we've talked so many times. I never asked.
Sure. Happy to chat. So actually very similar to you. I do have engineering background. I studied computer science or software engineering from University of Waterloo. And Waterloo has this really good co-op program where I get to actually work in multiple companies as an intern before I graduated. It's a 5-year program. So there's no like a summer break. Like a year is filled with either school semester or work semester. So with that opportunity, I was able to work with large corporations, including like Mercer, Barclays, Sun Microsystems,
Mm-hmm,
Facebook. So I also worked a lot in, I guess, Silicon Valley, like starting my like sophomore year.
mm-hmm,
Um, and I think I was in the research lab of Sun Microsystems, and originally I built a data visualization, dashboard system that shows sales forecasting of all Sun's servers and products, and
mm-hmm,
that's initially like kind of like what I was hired to do, but then
mm-hmm,
my manager wanted me to come back and help out building and optimizing the forecasting model underneath the dashboards as well. So that's really, I would say, how I got into data, coming
mm-hmm,
from more application development, system development perspective. I started learning R. And
mm-hmm,
my title was like analytics
mm-hmm,
intern. So that's really kind of how I learned more about transforming data, munging data, and also testing out data with more on the statistics view, which I would say now today have morphed into more of a role like a data scientist would do,
Oh, AI,
and
no specialist.
or AI, sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, yeah, because that led me into also working at Facebook. And a lot of the work that I did at Facebook was doing analysis and building data pipelines for their ad systems, because I was working in the growth team. When the company was growing and supporting like 300 million users to 400 million users, that's growing over a month period.
Mm-hmm,
And we are also at the time, this is back in 2009 actually, we were also like at the time, Facebook was a very much of a consumer only platform, but they were
mm-hmm,
actually starting a lot of effort to get advertisers on board. So there was a lot of discussions and work I was contributing regarding like both the user acquisition and advertiser acquisition, and providing like and trying to figure out what the delivery of the value that the data that Facebook has, how can this be positioned for other companies. So I think yeah, that's kind of how I got into data. And then just like fast forward with Select Star, after working with a number of large corporations as well as some startups, I ended up starting a company before Selectstar, also in the data space. So basically, after Facebook or Meta, I joined a management consulting firm, moved to New York, wanting to actually learn more about the business side of why people made these decisions that ended up like, building products and analyzing data for. And this is kind of what I wanted to learn more. And actually, when I was in consulting, I was in Deloitte for doing like tech strategy and operations consulting. And um, this is actually the part when I initially learned about financial services regulations, because my clients were JPMC, Deutsche Bank, and I used to go to their offices all the time doing like, 4 to 6 week projects, mostly around how can they actually operate better under the new regulations or compliant with those. So it in a way, like it's kind of very interesting when you bring these in regulations, because I feel like I was also like like a small part of that
Mhm.
while all the shift was happening in financial services firms. But I ended up joining a fast forward, I ended up joining a mobile ad network company as their first product manager. This was also a Series A startup growing from like 20 to 80 employees within a year. And we were having issues a lot with our data processing, real time data processing, because it was an ad network. And you need to
Mhm.
make sure that ads are being served correctly, and then there's a lot of data processing happens underneath to figure out what's the next right ad that we should
Mhm.
show that will be most highly likely to for you to click, and so on and so forth. So it's that infrastructure system that we saw a lot of bottlenecks for. And the lead engineer there and I started a company, spinning out a technology from that company. And that's called Concord Systems. That's my last and my very first company in the data space that I started actually 10 years ago.
Mhm.
We were fairly early in the market. One of our very first customers was Bloomberg, actually, because they were one of the companies that were, looking to and were already leveraging a lot of real-time data processing technologies. But I would say like we're quite early in the market. And I ended up selling the company to Akamai, which is a CDN network. And
Mhm.
Akamai, we basically integrated that technology into the IoT data platform. And this is a part where I ended up learning a lot more about how enterprises overall work with data.
Mhm.
So I worked with very closely with a lot of global automotive companies, and mostly car manufacturers, and um, also consumer electronics companies. And I've noticed that a lot of companies do like now with the era of cloud, collecting data, storing data, and then being able to run a lot of compute was not a big issue for them anymore with the
Mhm.
help of the cloud. But then every time when our customers were trying to answer business questions or to create a new product, uh,
Mhm.
when they were trying to like plan out like what type of like customer data should we show and how should we manage them, these are some of the areas that I was helping out with. It took weeks to
Mhm.
just get the right data streams and data products that they could use,
Yeah.
which was in a way mind-boggling. And this
Yeah.
is the main reason why I ended up starting Select Star.
Yeah.
There was a core problem that I've seen from the
Mhm.
customer's angle. And, as someone who has worked a lot with data in the past, as a data scientist and also as an analyst and also as a product manager, like this data discovery, understanding what data exists inside the company, but then also like the context of that data. How is
Mm-hmm.
this connected? Where did it come from? Like, who else has used this? Like, is this the right data I should use for my purpose? Like, that question is now so hard to answer for a lot
Mm-hmm.
of companies. And this is kind of like the core of how I ended up starting SelectStar.
Yeah. I can say that even though that's very interesting, and of course, this is the problem that I have seen a lot and a lot of data capabilities. So when I talk about helping clients achieve business value by building the right data capabilities, is that type of like what is the data? How do you connect it? Where did it come from? So all of those are data capabilities. So, but funny, it took me a while, and I'm a little embarrassed by that. When you and I started talking, I didn't, and I said that I used to be a coder, but like, oh, select star. I know what, then I kind of connected it to SQL. But because in the beginning, I'm bad with names and I never remember, like, it's hard for me to remember names. But it took me a while to click that select star is actually, it's SQL statement. So once
Yeah.
it clicked, now I know the name of your company really well.
Great. Yeah, I think sometimes, yeah, if we were to put just a select asterisk, more people would probably remember,
Yeah,
but they probably wouldn't think it's a company. Right?
yeah,
But
yeah.
I think when people like read it and then they're like, oh, select star, and we get like very interesting reactions. People either love it or they hate it because it
Hmm.
triggers them.
Yeah. Well, yeah. We can. That's a whole side conversation around
Yeah,
proper use of SQL.
exactly. Um, Awesome. So, I brought you here because we wanted to talk about data lineage, uh,
Hmm.
hyped reality, and the AI-driven value. This really is the topic, and data lineage is starting to come up a lot. Like, just,
Hmm.
I mean, it's coming up on 5 years for me since I started SelectStar, and if I can think of even like 3 years ago, data lineage wasn't always discussed that often, or
Hmm.
it wasn't part of a lot of the features. Like a lot of people knew that they wanted something like data lineage, but they weren't really sure whether they were going to get it.
Hmm.
But then now, like today, I feel like the market's so different. A lot of modern systems do provide lineage out of the box,
Yeah.
and the desire to automate more things on lineage creation as well as leveraging lineage, I would say, is much higher. And the standard
Hmm.
has gotten higher, which is really interesting to see. Um,
Hmm.
I would love to hear from you. I mean, this is like also coming from more practitioner and also on the data engineering, data analytics side of the world. But on the data management side, I would love to hear your thoughts about why you think data lineage has become such a hot topic in the management and governance circles as well.
So I'm not sure I entirely agree that it became. I think one of things that it's bringing more up is with AI and importance of knowing what data goes into your models and whether you have rights to that data. So data lineage plays into that. But data lineage, if I go back to Citi and post, like financial services companies, not just Citi, one of the things you had to show is where you getting the data from and are you getting the right data, and so that was data lineage. Um, and a lot of data management professionals, including me, will love the idea of data lineage because of course you want to know where your data is coming from, you want to know where it's transformed, want to understand the flow when you have data quality issues. It's really important, and it's very helpful to know all the stops that data makes across the company and where the data quality issue may originate so you can fix it at the source. So fixing at the source on its face requires data lineage. So as many, again, especially coming out of regulatory drivers, data lineage was to some degree the holy grail of the program. Couple of issues with that that everybody encountered. There isn't in the legacy companies where you have multiple hubs. For a lot of financial services companies, those hubs originate with the COBOL systems. that don't have any offer, no transparency as to what's going on inside. And it's not one system, it's like a bunch of them, and it gets moved in master files that you have hard time parsing. So creating data lineage was hugely manually intensive, very, very expensive projects. And companies spend, depending on the size of the company, millions, if not billions of dollars continually doing it. One other thing about data lineage, the moment you're done, it's wrong, because there is a lot of change. Like, think about any large bank, from loan origination system all the way to financial reporting. How much change happens on that chain? It's 20, 30, 40 systems. So the moment you are done mapping it out, something has changed. So you kind of have to keep it up to date all the time. So that's a problem, because you never stop. You can declare victory, you can say we're done, you cannot say we're done. So then people started thinking we want to plug it into our change management processes, and that way we will catch the change. That's now leads to a lot of cultural changes, because now you need to think of a change not in terms of I'm changing technology and code, I'm also changing data. And if people had that mindset to begin with, we wouldn't have as many problems as we do around data. If people had a data centric view of any project, whatever development. So on one hand, you have that very strong desire, and kind of people, of course, we want to know where the data is coming from. And of course, it's useful. To it's actually very expensive. Is it worth it? And at what level is it worth it? So that's the tension between, and this is where I came to, and you and I started talking about it after one of my most popular newsletters, which I did not expect for that news. Like, you never know what's gonna, you would think that business value out of AI would be more popular than data lineage. It ain't. Data lineage is was a lot more popular newsletter. Like, go figure. But it was also a little controversial, because I was saying it's too expensive to do it on the attribute level. Do it at least on the business process or system level, and then you go down to data classes, and most of the time that's enough for the most value. But a lot of people kind of objected to that, and that's where our conversation has started.
Yeah, because I objected to that too, right?
Yeah.
What's the point
Oh,
of having systems lineage, or is there a part of a system lineage that, or level of system lineage that you're referring to? Because, um, like the core of why data lineage was requested by the regulators, as well as for companies to start using it, was because of this like root cause analysis,
right.
right? So if we don't have that at the data set level, we won't be able to get it. So if someone is looking to understand how was this um, metric calculated, like what would be the course of action without with having just system lineage? We understand this came from COBOL system, but
Yeah. Well,
what
so
would be
system
the workflow from there?
so this is different, because for the regulators you do need to have, but that's why you have the whole critical data elements, where you try to limit the scope, because again, the tax that you pay to produce this is very high. And I have seen people who have built this and continue to build it, and then it kind of lapses when the regulators step away, and then they start restarting it. So my conversation was less on if you have a regulatory driver and you have regulators that are explicitly asking you for this, then yeah, you've got to do it. What I think is kind of irrelevant. I'm not a regulator. You can't say, well, Julia said in her newsletter we don't have to do it, so here you go, regulators. That's just not going to fly. Don't try it. But I'm talking about when you talk about data management for the business value, to impact business growth, that's where you have to weigh how much you put in. And again, if you are in a legacy environment, it's just so complex. If you need to do data quality analysis or data quality issues, if you know how the systems flow and you know what type of data comes from which system, which is data class lineage, That gives you enough information to go and then look in more detail. You still need to do root cause analysis. You still need to get to it. But there is a difference between doing proactively every step of the way for every attribute versus you have high level picture and then you know where to dig, and then you go dig where, when you have a problem. So
Yeah,
again,
for
this
sure.
is, as a
And
again as a data management professional, I absolutely want to have data lineage for every single piece of data. Where I'm coming from is, as somebody who had to explain the value of the program and how much money I'm spending on it, I
yep.
wasn't able to find a way to explain it to business people, even to financial organization. They wouldn't like, okay, yeah, we want it. Here is how much it's gonna take. Okay, never mind.
Yeah, I mean, this is why for legacy systems that you end up seeing it just in reports. And also, one of the reasons I think why a lot of companies are starting to move to the cloud or have more modern systems is because it's a lot easier to trace and also get the metadata out of those
Hmm.
systems.
Yes.
I mean, I think now tools like Fivetran and lots of other like tools, they support a lot of legacy systems to be able to connect it to. And
Hmm.
the actual data sourcing and the data collection might still happen on the legacy systems, but then the actual transformation of those data and the
Hmm.
aggregation and actually creating what goes into the business
Hmm.
operation metrics, I think those actually happen now more on the modern systems, which
Yeah.
is easier to track lineage
Yeah.
automatically.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. So again, if you go in, this is what I have done as well. When you build a whole new, so you have legacy part. If you have a legacy company or company with a large legacy footprint, whatever happens from the point of origination to the point where you source the data, and it could be many, many, many hubs, including end user applications. If you go start digging that, you will never stop. But the moment you start collecting the data and putting it into, especially cloud environment, but even before the cloud, into enterprise data warehouse, data lake, whatever you call it, it has like you have to put as a modern data professional, data lineage centric or metadata, not even data, not only data lineage,
Yeah, it's
meta,
metadata.
metadata centric architecture. This is actually, you mentioned that you and I met through Olga. This is what Olga was doing. It's building, her official title was metadata architect.
Hmm.
And it was metadata centric architecture, so you can collect not only the lineage, but there is quality piece to it, and there is business descriptions and like all kinds of metadata. So for the modern, if you're building a modern platform, you absolutely need to build it in that way and take advantage of all of this tooling that now exists, that allows you to harvest this data automatically, to use AI. A lot of tools give AI capabilities as well to create business metadata and to do that connectivity and just make it as a natural output or
Hmm.
of the architecture you put in place. I have no, like, absolutely. And also, this is one of my pet peeves with the startup companies, that if you're a startup, you've got to put data management from the get go and not try to do it because it's an advantage that you have over legacy. And
Yeah.
Shinji, I'm not going to ask you whether you did it for your own company because we're in live events, so that's a separate conversation.
You can ask.
I've asked somebody else fairly recently who is also in data management tooling space, and I asked, how's your data management within your company? And the answer was, not so good. And I'm like, please don't tell me that. You sell data management. But number of people, like number of silly reach outs I get from data management companies or technology providers on the sales side show me quite often that they don't have, you have cobbler children without the shoes. um
Yeah, I think for a small company, there's just like so many other things that you need to take care of just to get the business running. So it kind of does sit in the backseat often.
but it's
But
easy. Shinji, it's
Yeah,
easy when you start
but yeah, I was
out.
gonna say it's much easier because there's not
Yeah,
as many layers of
yeah,
transformation or siloed
yeah,
approaches of yeah. So I think it's just like a matter of putting some effort to make sure that they're because I think a lot of it also comes from the top. Like, are
yeah,
we actually measuring and tracking how our like users are doing, or what are the main features that they use the most, like are they
yeah,
coming back, like a lot of those things comes like directly is correlated to understanding and using data. So
yeah,
like that I think yeah, that's something
yeah.
that like we also like worked on like a year back, or
Mhm.
maybe it's been about 2 years, to kind of have that like system in place. um but yeah, I'm with you. I think that happens a lot, and for us I think the other part that like really kind of for us actually got in the shape of having a lot of processes early on was actually for complying with SOC 2.
Mhm.
So, because like we are selling to enterprises and we need to have a standards of security, but like SOC 2 actually gave us a really good guidance, even though in the beginning it was a lot more than, but because we didn't have much, it was also easier to just build towards having those monitors and standards and policies upfront. So
Yeah.
I think it's both sides. And I actually see this from our customers too. A lot of
Mhm.
like more than about half of our customers today at Selectstar are mid-market companies and
Mm.
fast-growing startups, like 300 employees, 500 employees. Like, they are moving and fast growing. Not necessarily, although we do have some enterprises that are like more than 10,000 employees and they already have a lot of like legacy and old data models that they need to take care of. So I actually, but whenever I talk to startups and mid-market companies, I hear two camps. One is they're not so sure whether they should implement like data dictionary, data catalog, data lineage, uh, like at this time because their team is so small, like less than 10 people. Like is it really worth it, and they need to kind of figure out how to position that to the management to get the budget. And then I do also get the camp of startups, usually driven by CTOs and um, uh, heads of data that came from like maybe a little bit larger company that have gone through a like significant growth. They've seen how it backfires them when they
Yeah.
didn't have it early in place.
Mhm.
So their mindset was more of like, let's get the system in place, everyone to use the system before we build so much travel knowledge.
Yeah.
We're about to hire more people. We're about like people that are here, who knows when they might leave. It's important to have a system of record for data analytics and how we use data. And I think
Mhm.
that's really the right approach to do. But then at the same time, it's
Yeah.
hard for a
It's
lot of companies to make that call.
it just you have to think about it, I think, more so because we all know that a lot of companies fail, not face issues with scalability and going to the new markets, creating new products because they don't have data management to begin with. And if you're a startup, you have an advantage because for more grown-up company, it's a lot of money to build that in. And as I said, like our whole conversation on data lineage, it's not worth it. It's just a lot of money to keep building it on legacy environment. You build it on new. So as a startup, you have that advantage. And some of it, just taking away a little bit of stepping away from metadata, like one of the I'm advising startups, and so I was recently talking to a CEO of one of the companies, and he's creating a whole spreadsheet of potential clients that he's going to reach out to, and they bought some data and everything. I'm like, look, can you please do a favor for me because you don't have CRM yet? Can you please add a column in front of each name, each line, and put a number, and that's going to be your ID for that prospect. So when you get to the point of having a CRM, you automatically have an ID for every single prospect you have reached out to, and then you can trace all the rest of it. Like you don't have to do much, just add one more column and have Excel populate 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? It's not very much, but that just sets you up for a lot of success later, so you don't reach out to the same people with the same message, 3 days apart, without
Sure.
any awareness that you have done it. Because, oh God, how many times that's happened to me. And I'm sure, Shinji, that happens to you as well, because there are people who sell services to you as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot about the cost of Lineage, how complicated it is, and like what it takes to get there. Uh, can you share also a time in your past experience when you realized it was Lineage that really saved the day?
So Lineage, as the main use of Lineage, there are two pieces, right? So one of them is when you change management, uh, change management as in technology change, not change,
Mm-hmm.
not cultural, technology change, like
Yep.
you know, the basic.
Like column
You
name
make,
change or deletion of
yeah,
column or adding
yeah,
new
you make
columns.
something and then you put it in production and you didn't realize that you have a system that dependent on it, and now you have a key functionality broken in front of your customers, especially for more legacy companies, when you have your digital presence, your websites wired into multiple different systems, operational systems showing data. You make a change and all of a sudden things don't add up, or just plain out broken on your website, and you want to fix it really quickly, or preferably you're much more proactive and you have all of this information. So that's one big outcome of having the Lineage. And that's where critical systems, critical business processes, which are usually the client facing ones, or something that has to do with money,
Yep.
meaning
Yep.
if you take money, you need to make sure that you pay what you need to pay, and you take in and you have all of that. So those two types are the most critical ones to have a Lineage. The second one is, of course, when you have data quality issue, or if you have a regulator come in with a question, and you want to make sure that the answer you provide actually relies on the most accurate data you have. And you also want to make sure, if because that's a lot of times when banks got into problems, when regulators ask questions of different groups, the answers were different significantly because they went to different systems. So that's a lot of the prevention of that type of work. And so when you answer, so that's the two main drivers. One of them is change management. The other one is understanding where your data is coming from, and also understanding and knowing where to look when you're looking for data problems, or the sources, the root causes of the data problems. The piece that I think when you started with, why it's becoming much more, um, it's coming back kind of front
Yeah.
stage
Or yeah,
now.
important. Yeah.
Yeah,
More people
it's
looking at it.
AI. Is You need to know, do you have rights to the data you're using to the models? Partially data, partially Lineage, partially data rights, which is other piece of metadata management that kind of sits on top. Second one, did you get the right data? Because it's lovely to have the bestest models there are, but if you feed in the wrong data, your answers are going to be wrong. Your
Yeah.
training data
Exactly.
has to be right. When you train people, or well, models, people as well, badly, they produce bad answers or bad actions, Especially, it worries me a great deal with agentic AI. It's now so hard, and everybody kind of, oh yeah, we're gonna make it. They're gonna actually do things, not just say things. Like, oh, good luck with that. And how are you gonna know whether they're doing the right things?
It's getting more dangerous
Saying the
now.
right things, like, yeah. So that's a really big deal. And I think this is one of the reasons you might be seeing a spike in interest, because for organizations that are really concerned with producing the correct results, data lineage comes more front and center. And again, the hope is that they're on a more modern stack, because again, what's the value of your AI investment or your AI outcomes if you have to go and now dig through Lineage on the legacy? Is there still a value?
Hmm.
But if you're on the modern data stack and you've architected it well, that's you're in a much better spot.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. I mean, I think this also correlates to how originally you talked about like Lineage being like traditionally kind of got introduced and was implemented to answer auditor questions.
Mm-hmm.
But it's actually, if you were to use it to help operationalize what makes best sense for the business, it has a lot bigger impact.
Mm-hmm. It does again, but you know my butt, right? We've discussed it, Ed. Uh, it depends what you have in terms of your technology background. So one, I think of the main takeaways for people who are listening, that if you're building new or you're building new environment, put Lineage in. It's not, even if you're in an older company, you're not a startup, it's still easier, much easier with current tools to do it metadata centric, so you don't have to do those excavation projects.
Yeah, yeah. Where are these operational workflows that you have seen that Lineage was like a critical component to either automate or for the end users or business to be aware of? What are those cases that these are being used not just for reporting or um, I guess technical change management purposes?
Hmm. Well, technical change management has large business impact. So yeah, the critical ones, as I said, I think everything that's customer facing.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
understanding where the data is coming from and making sure that you're getting the right data into all parts of your, for example, if you have a large customer facing website. So, and I know nothing about Amazon website, I'm just using it as an example because everybody knows Amazon. So it's an easy example. It's a huge website, huge sprawling website that probably has linkages to multiple systems in Amazon backend. Again, I know nothing about Amazon architecture. I'm just using it and extrapolating, but just knowing. So, but you do want to see, if you are in there like list of products page and there is a price and you click on it, you want to see the same price when you have a description of the product. And you actually want to see not just the same price, you want to have the same product description. You really, and Amazon does it really well. So I'm not like nothing knocking on Amazon. But imagine that a lot of companies have those very sprawling website. And when you have a menu, it's coming from one place. And when you click on it, it's coming from a different place. Whatever it is, you click on transaction, you whatever it is that you're clicking through, you want to make sure all of that is hangs together and comes from the same place.
Yeah.
It's
Uh,
almost so that's Lineage is very important because that's there is reputation, there is potential money impact. So that's a really big one. The other one is in your call centers. When your call center representatives are given information to the customer. So again, it's a customer facing. So one is web and automatic. The other one is more call like people centric, right? Assuming that you still have people answering calls, which I recommend companies do, because there is nothing more annoying than a never ending loop of automated messages. But they also give you the right information because you have to stand behind. And there've been cases, right, with the chatbots, but the same is true with people. Because if people who are giving you answers don't have access to the right answers or go to the wrong place, that's also bad. So everything that's again money in, money out, and customer facing.
yeah. What I was just thinking about while you were saying that is, a lot of this is relates to data quality that
Mm-hmm.
requires kind of like almost um, like you need to make sure your data sources and the way that the data is being treated to get to the customer or to the customer
Mm-hmm.
facing product needs to be correct and pristine. And that really like makes me think about how data quality in some cases, in these specific cases that impacts business, becomes a big indicator of product quality,
Mm-hmm.
the business's product quality. And I think
Yeah.
that's why it becomes really important. One of our customers called Zometry, they have a manufacturing marketplace, like parts marketplace, and they can give quotes and pricing in real time,
Mm-hmm.
because these are custom manufacturing parts that companies order or all around the world. And their pricing model is a revenue driver. It is
Mm-hmm.
a data product, and
Mm-hmm.
it is something that gets affected not just from the data pipeline, but also maybe changes that may happen on the production, like product changes that it happens
Mm-hmm.
on the engineering side. And they implemented our column level lineage, but really wanted to have, and this was like one of the main driver why we added column lineage support for RESTful API 3 years ago, because they wanted to make sure that lineage information is connected to the production engineering GitHub environment. So
Mm-hmm.
any changes there, because all of their tables are already synced directly to data warehouses, um, before it gets to data models and the data science, the pricing model changes, the
Mm-hmm.
production team already knows if it's going to affect any of those, and they can double check before pushing any
Mm-hmm.
changes.
Yeah.
Um, I think a lot of that automation is now possible because
Mm-hmm.
of Lineage.
Yeah, because of Lineage and because you now have a more modern tools.
Yes, and
But
modern tools for
like you
sure.
mentioned GitHub, I assume GitHub has APIs that you can plug into and see the changes.
Yeah, so now we have a GitHub Actions, the CI/CD plugin, so that
Mm-hmm.
any other customers can do this without having to do a manual API
Yeah.
integration,
So
which is one of like the popular like these tools integrations that we have today.
yeah, so that's what I'm saying. So a lot of things around lineage and complexities have to do with the kind of older technology estates where you don't have that. So one of the organizations at this point, I'm going to stop naming names, had their application inventory on the Excel spreadsheet. So it wasn't a very complex organization. Well, I mean, it was actually complex enough, not one of the larger ones, but you can plug in into your Excel spreadsheet automatically to figure out what the changes are. Also, Excel spreadsheet doesn't have a very limited way of displaying information. Um, then the other systems had more, like you have to have a really good change management software. Lineage is very much dependent. So that problem with Lineage, that it's wrong the moment you're done, is actually a problem that's solved by really good change management software where you can plug in and automatically get and track the changes. So if you have that, then you don't have that gotcha. Now,
Yeah,
again,
exactly.
this is around engineering. And, I think one of the things that we started with, I said that if people were thinking about system changes as data changes first and system changes second, you would avoid a lot of the problems we have in data management and in using data for growth, scaling, whatever it is that you want to use the data for. But not a lot of companies do that. But not, given having said that, if they want to do it, there is a much better tool set available.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's also a really good point. Like if they think about the changes that's happening in data, like this is why the data quality tests are
Mhm.
or should be implemented in that level, so that when you're making changes, you may be able to see what is the data actually going to look like. Is it going to be the same, or
Mhm.
is the value going to be drastically different if I
Mhm.
change this field,
Mhm.
for example?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Awesome. I'm just looking at the time. I want to jump into the topic of AI. Um,
Okay.
yeah, because
We talked a little about it.
yeah, we
Yeah.
talked a little bit about it. I would love to hear your thoughts on how kind of like the AI driven analytics systems, more modern cloud systems, like like what does that mean for actually having like these all these advanced lineage capabilities to AI projects? How do you feel like how do you think that companies will be now be able to leverage lineage? Obviously there is the part of understanding where it's coming from, But
Mhm.
for AI to be really effective, so that it doesn't hallucinate and it provides the right answers, or what are the areas that you see that Lineage being applied today?
So actually, can I book your question a little bit back first?
Okay.
Because one of the things that makes me excited about AI, and this is where, well, machine learning, I was always waiting, and kind of there are tools out there that use machine learning techniques to help with master data management. So instead of rules based, you have it machine learning based. But and the same with metadata creation and identifying the data classes and so on. What actually I'm excited about in Gen AI space, because one of the biggest issues in metadata management, if not just Lineage, but for example, business descriptions, is getting the business descriptions. Right, because it's in somebody's brain. It's especially with people doing agile, it's more rarely, very rarely written. Gen AI can help with that, not just, because there is just so much information out there, and if you put something that's not overly specific to your business, it can provide a reasonable description. Then it's much easier to work with than trying to have somebody to type in everyone. So that between and the other thing with the Lineage is you want to connect your technical metadata, technical data moving with the business descriptions and how it's been used. The same with AI, using Gen AI to understand the transformations and transformation logic. So it's kind of reverse. So people put logic in and AI produces the code. You can do it the other way around. You put the code in and it produces the documentation. That's actually more, to my mind, it's much more valuable than the other way around. Because, I don't think AI can produce code better than humans. And I've seen way too many times when you give the requirements to a human and what they produce is nowhere close or just far enough from the requirement. So if you put it into Gen AI, you will still have the same problem. I mean, it can speed it up. I'm not going to talk about efficiency, right? It can give you, but you still kind of, the major problem with code development is I wanted this, you gave me this. Those are not the same things. And Gen AI, I don't think solves it, but it solves to large extent creating documentation from the code problem. So I think all of those advances between AI, well, Gen AI and kind of traditional machine learning help a lot with the data management maturity that then helps you create models that produce correct results from the data you have rights to, that is brings the value that's higher than the amount of investment you put in, and you have to continue putting in to keep getting that result, right? So that's basically where I think AI is. So there is like one piece of getting the data management up to par, and the second one is continually doing this so you have a value, and then using AI to produce whatever outcome you want to produce.
Mm-hmm. Um, that makes sense. I have a kind of like a side question on this. Then where do you stand on uh, semantic layer or semantic models?
Oh, I'm
Do
a
you
big fan.
okay? Tell me
Yeah.
more. Like because like even because it's another like a layer of data models that you have to create and maintain.
Well, if you have to create and maintain it manually, it's the same. It's useful, but you have the same problem as with Lineage. It's too difficult, and not a lot of people who know how to do semantic modeling. So
Mm-hmm.
it's actually I have tried, like I have tried to do, I have done semantic models for a while, like in different jobs, and I'm a big fan of them because again, that's where the meaning of the data, context of the data,
Mm-hmm.
connections between the data, are you using the right, like there is a enormous amount of goodness in
Yeah.
semantics models. And also semantic model graphs produce much more accurate results out of LLMs.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually, there've been a bunch of kind of tests done and all of that. So if you have semantically connected knowledge graph, you have a much better chance of outcome, of a correct outcome, versus if you have a relational database sitting
Mm-hmm.
there. So huge fan of semantic models. Want to have machine learning and AI help creating them. This is partially what I was talking about, is using machine learning to help create those connections on semantic level, descriptions, and connect different entities to each other. I know I'm talking in a very general way, but we have a very general conversation. But actually, one of the companies that I advise, that's what they do, and I'm like it, and it's complex what they do, but it's incredibly useful as well.
Oh, like they will generate a semantic
Yeah.
model?
Yes, if the name of the company is Flurry, in case you're interested, and yeah, that's exactly what they do. They generate based on all the assets within the company that you have. They and it's a human in a loop system. They generate semantic model, and then they generate a knowledge graph that can feed into your Gen AI. It's yeah. Every time I talk to them, I kind of get very excited.
Oh, that's awesome. I gotta check it out. It is one of the areas that we are working on too, because we actually see a lot of context of both the raw data and like
Hmm.
or what's in the data warehouse data mart systems, as well
Hmm.
as how those data is currently being utilized in the BI systems and
Hmm.
where it's being consumed. And that gives us a lot of insights around which specific aspect of the data and the columns, and should that be the model of semantics, if we especially to use it for Gen AI. So that's like kind of one of the next areas we're working on right now.
Yeah. Well, if you want, check out the new in data tech with Julia on Flirty. So it's somewhere, it's
I
fairly
think
easy to
I've seen
find.
the video before, but I gotta check it out again.
Yeah, yeah, it's up to it's 20 minutes. It's a total data geek out. We talk like ontology and semantics fly like right and left. But it's a very cool platform.
Awesome.
But it's very cool what they do.
Good stuff. So as we close up, I would love to hear any of your final advice or gotchas to look out for people and organizations that are on the fence and thinking about investing in data lineage.
So the major one, if you're building something new, don't build without metadata management. Think of it as a metadata driven architecture. The amount of goodness you will reap out of it is incredible. Like it enables so many things, including value from AI. So you're building something new, definitely like do it metadata centric, get the lineage in. There is no excuse not to. If you have a legacy environment, I'm gonna go back to my advice from the newsletter that you didn't like.
When you say
Uh,
legacy, you're talking about non-cloud on-premise systems.
On-prem, yes, on-prem all the systems, yes.
Okay, but if
Yeah,
anything is on the cloud, it doesn't have to be always new projects, but existing
yes,
platforms with cloud.
yeah.
If you don't have a metadata system today, your advice is to adopt a metadata system to
Well,
start
absolutely.
managing it.
Yes. The other one, when you do go on the cloud, you the number of tools or platforms you can use for every single piece is enormous.
Yeah.
The more different platforms you have, the harder it's going to be for you to integrate their metadata capabilities. They most of them give you metadata management capabilities. It's going to be harder for you to integrate. So think about it from that perspective as well, and don't do best of breed unless you absolutely have to. Again, metadata data and metadata centric architecture, make sure it's easy for you to get it.
Get the metadata out of the systems.
Yes, metadata out of the system and good data management out of the system. This is more enterprise architecture advice. Every time when you're looking to bring in a new platform or a new piece of software on the cloud, think about, is it worth an additional integration and additional harvesting and additional connections, or whether your current tool has that capability. It may not be as pretty as the best of breed tool, but if it's satisfactory, it may be much better off for you to use that capability in the existing tool.
Then do you generally have a preference between having a separate tool for metadata management versus using a built-in metadata management functionality of a like data warehouse or lake, for
Well,
example.
but you have more than data warehouse. So again, that's a huge it depends answer, and we have like no minutes left. So it's a huge it depends. It depends on what you need, why you need it, and how you're gonna use it.
Yeah. I mean, many companies have multiple tools, but yeah,
Yeah.
makes
Okay.
sense. Well, thank you so much, Julia, for joining me today. We ran out so quickly, but this was a really insightful conversation about data lineage and everything around it. So thanks again, and I will see you
Great
later.
talking to you. I'll see you later. Thank you. Bye.